Hey everyone, welcome to the next installment of the MazdaSpeed3 to MZ3 swap, where we're going to be sticking the turbo engine inside of this naturally aspirated Mazda3. And if you're not familiar with this car, it's a little bit of a battle stance, flared out, 9-inch wide wheels, and got a lot of upgraded suspension in the rear. BC Racing coilovers that were on this thing are going to be going on here. As you can see, we did some painting and making sure things look really nice when they're all finished up and on the car. But essentially for today, we're going to be preparing this engine bay to seat its new components and its new engine. So that would include the AC lines you see there. Those have to come off. One's sitting off already. The heater core lines have to be switched out because they have a 90-degree angle on the Speed3. All the brake lines have to get moved over since the turbo is going to be sitting right there and I don't really want to burn my car down to the ground. Brake booster has to get switched out along with the ABS stuff, which shouldn't be too hard. And today we're going to be going online and ordering some motor mounts so that once I get all this done, I can go ahead and plop the Speed3 engine in here, and that's pretty much it. Oh, and the wiring harness too, kind of forgot about that. That wiring harness has to get switched out with the fuse box for the Speed3 one. And then once here forward is finished in the car, we have to go inside. We have to come in here and swap everything out because of the OBD2 port and the key because it's programmed to the ECU. And also the fuel pump and a couple other little things. So literally everything out of this car has to come out. Seats, consoles, dashboard, carpet, even the headliner has to come down just a little bit to get the wiring loom out. And I'm talking about the wires from the front of the car to the tail lights has to be taken off and swapped. Now, it's not too bad, because if you look in here, that's pretty much, you can tell the headliner's been pulled down, all the accessories for it are pulled off, and the actual wire loom is just sitting down here underneath this carpet. The carpet's loose. I just wanted to set a couple things down, like the steering column. This is the old fuse box from this car. So all this is going to be going in that car, even this. And especially, this has some nice red stitching on it, so I'm going to keep that. Even though one of these days I would like to get an aftermarket wheel and try to make something so that you can reuse these switches, almost like taking the switches out and potentially like 3D printing a panel that you could stick in your car somewhere for the future. Not anytime at this moment. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and get started on the silver car, guys. And if you want any parts that you see sitting in there that are not going to go with the engine, the brakes, transmission, anything like that, hit me up. You know, driver mirror in good condition, a little faded, but it's in good condition. You know, some other random stuff around the car, the rear bumper, the tires once the car is ready to leave, or I mean the rims, sorry. Rims once the car is ready to leave. We'll figure it out. Drop me a message down below if you want any parts off that car. You can even have that side skirt that's sitting right there. Alright, let's go. Alright, so let's head over to the Mazda here, the old donor car, and as you can see we got quite a few things off that were needed. One being the big brake booster. That was a little bit difficult because you had to be underneath in the firewall to get these 4 bolts out. It's a specific clip or a pin that holds the brake pedal to the brake booster, and basically that took quite a while to get off. Not a terrible thing, but maybe we'll show it more in depth on the silver car since we're going to pull the whole dash out before we even do anything to the firewall. And if you didn't notice, the wiring loom is also fully out of the car, so is the fuse box. And that's sitting right over here. Alright guys, so right here is the main source of where the most headaches are going to come from doing the swap. These are the 2 fuse box covers. This one's off of the regular 3 and this one's off the Speed3. Now, just by looking at one little section here, this here, I don't know if you can see that at all, but that says fuel pump. And if we go to the corresponding one on this one, it says PTC. They're different amperage. One's a 30 amp, one's a 80 amp. And essentially, this goes on across the entire fuse box panel of different fuses and different reasons for those fuses, which also would mean that where those fuses come in and then end up going to, like into the dashboard or into the plugs, are going to be different. Alright guys, so our first focus is going to be on the brake booster. And to start getting the brake booster off, we're going to have to disconnect these two hard lines that go over to the ABS unit. And then take a couple of these plugs off. Like I got one off here. This guy's pretty easy, if you can get it right the first time. So got those off. These two hard lines, these two bolts, this whole unit will slide off, and then we're going to have to go inside the car for 4 bolts that you take off through the firewall. One thing to note, I'm getting brake fluid all over this subframe I just painted, so I'm going to have to clean that off and make sure it doesn't eat through the paint. Alright guys, next part is going to be inside the car, and underneath here, locate your brake pedal, which is right here. And if you look up this bolt and that bolt, and then there's 2 more above it that need to come off with a 12mm. So I'm not going to sit here and show you this. It's pretty simple. It's just in a very hard spot, so you're going to have to use a U-joint or something like that to get it out. So have fun. Alright, so we go ahead and got the booster off. Now just disconnected all these guys right here, and we're going to go ahead and take the ABS unit off. And before I do that, this is all kind of loose right now. I have to take this corner's brake line off of this, and then this will all come out as one unit with these brake lines on here, which will make it just easier to take off. And then we can finally get to this wiring harness and the fuse box. ABS system's out. Now for the wiring harness, the one part that makes this tricky is this one wire right here, which actually runs up into this part, over and to the wiper mechanism. So that all has to be taken off up here, including the wiper mechanism actually. So that's going to be a quick process. It's literally just disconnecting your wipers, taking this plastic off, and then there's a bunch of bolts that take this metal shroud off the front, and then you can actually get to taking that wire off. And then after that, we just have to kind of unplug and unclip all this stuff. And when you get to this here, there's not enough clearance in between this and this, so you're gonna have to take, you know, a pair of pliers or something, grab this and bend it this way and pull this out, and you can actually bend it back later. So that's what we did in the black car, and it worked just fine. So I think I'm just gonna go ahead and do all this and probably not videotape it. It's pretty self-explanatory. You just go inside here behind the firewall, disconnect clips for the wiring loom, and then work your way over to the fuse box, take it all out, call it a day. So I went ahead and took that shroud off. Now you can see here's that wire that I was talking about. Comes up through and then back over here. It's kind of hard to see because of the sun. Back underneath this right here, and it's a little tricky to get to, so what I did on the other cars, I took this whole unit out, which isn't too hard, but I'm gonna see if I can't wiggle my fingers in there and get it out easier. If not, I'll take this out, like I said, pretty easy. Alright, the next part of removing the fuse box harness is getting to a couple of these plugs on the inside of the car. I went ahead and removed the dash. That's pretty easy. You just pop off this panel, this trim piece, and it'll expose all these screws, and there's a screw here and a screw here that will allow you to pretty much pull the glove box out of here and then expose this. Then you're gonna have to take this so you can get to these little kind of, I don't know, holders or whatever. They're like wing nuts on the back that hold this up in place, and when you drop that down you can go ahead and get this plug. It's just a push these tabs and yank it up, and it comes off of the fuse panel inside the car. There's just like a couple of these clips in place to hold the wires, and then this is the other one you're gonna need. This one you're gonna have to fish up and around through the glove box to get it out through this hole, and that's the only tube besides this one here. And that one is going to connect to the bottom of this fuse panel. So there's just this one last wire here that goes out to the car, and you should be pretty much ready to start disassembling the rest of the wire harness from the engine bay. Totally forgot to mention and didn't notice earlier that this one also has to come off. Same idea, it's just connected to this big loom right here. So just go ahead and yank that off, and should be pretty easy after that. Alright, so here's the next little tricky part. Here's the wire loom pulled through. One thing I forgot to mention is to take the wheel speed sensor and your side blinker out through the wheel well. That's pretty self-explanatory, pretty easy. And then we're going to take this guy, this little piece of metal here, and just kind of bend it over. Bend it over enough, it's gonna bend, like, you know, make it structurally not sound anymore, but it's only one screw for the ABS unit, so it's not super important. That's why we're gonna go ahead and bend it, and then it's gonna end up working your way up this way and over to your fuse box, and that's pretty much it. It's really self-explanatory, super easy. And once we're done with this, I'm gonna go ahead and mock up these brake lines, and these fuel lines actually need to be bent over this way as well, and then we'll wash the whole engine bay and then start the reinstallation process. Alright guys, so I've pretty much got a couple things exposed now. These lines are all loose and we're ready to start bending them to their proper positions, because before they were mounted over here and then pretty much ran up here and mounted this way, and we can't have that pretty much because it's going to be right in the way of the turbo and all of the hot gases that are going to be flying out of that thing potentially. So I want to keep any sort of flammable liquid from leaking on that away from it. Alright, so I just went ahead and angle grinded that little nub off and that little nub off. I'm gonna hit it with a little bit of spray paint real quick just so it doesn't rust over, and install that next piece. Alright guys, so spent a good hour here playing with these brake lines. I know it's a little hard to see because of these shadows, but basically all these lines came straight up this way and mounted to the bulkhead, kind of like this, or the firewall, whatever you want to call it. And they needed to be moved over here for heat issues. Use the old like connector off of the Speed3, pretty much just mounted it up in the same spot right there, and then proceeded to move all the brake lines so that they would match up. And these are actually the lines from the ABS sensor from the Speed3, so like these were where they needed to be, and I just needed to pretty much match up all these brake lines and make them fit. You can see, like, definitely not supposed to be this way. They're not bent up perfectly. I did hand bend most of them. I did a couple like 90s with the pipe bender, but they came out really well. They're away from the heat area. And then the other problem that we were going to run into would be the fuel lines, and the fuel lines came straight up this way over the top of the engine, and if we ever had a fuel issue, again, it would drip straight down onto the turbo and the manifold and all that. Did a single 90 bend here and here and just brought it over to about here. This is going to get pushed in to around here eventually, but I want the motor in to kind of hand bend it the rest of the way so that I know exactly where everything needs to go. But at this point in time, guys, it is time to clean this thing and just get it ready for reinstallation. So check back in a little bit, and yeah, thanks for watching. This is getting better and better as we go. I'm trying to take my time and do as good as a job as I can. I do still have to get this AC line off, and if you ever taken a Ford AC line off, it's ridiculous and stupid. It makes absolutely no sense. You literally have to get a tool that goes behind this little ring, snaps inside the ring, and then you can pop this off. And we just didn't have this size. My dad was missing one size from work, so like that's the size that we ended up needing for this. But anyways, gonna clean this up and check back in a little bit once we put the brake booster in, connect that back up by bending that piece of metal and putting the wiring loom back up. And after that, I really just gotta wait on the motor mounts for everything in the engine, and it's ready for the engine to sit at least in here, and then we can move to the inside of the car and swap the dashes, do all that stuff. But like, just being able to see the engine sitting in here and all of the components working is gonna be a huge step. Oh, and we also gotta put the shifter back in, the shifting cables. So not super hard, but that will be something for sure. Alright everyone, we got another update here. The wiring harness is in, the engine bay is clean, brake booster sitting back in here, so I gotta get the master cylinder hooked up. Next thing here is to swap over this clutch line so that it matches up with the Speed3 clutch line. And that's gonna be done with a bracket that's actually still on this car. You're gonna need this bracket right here. You're gonna be hooking that up to basically that thing right there is where your clutch sends fluid through it. So it's gonna be plugging up into that. Man, this focus is garbage right now. That's gonna go right up into there. I know it's hard to see, but right into there, and then it's gonna get clamped down with that bracket on that little rubber piece in that hole.